Welcome, everybody. We're finally here. Thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight. This is the Thursday night version of Diamond in the House for ASEA. For some of you, this will be the very first time you've ever taken a look, but there are scores of people in living rooms across the eastern part of the United States that are tuning into this live this evening. My name is Jerry White. My background was in physical therapy and in athletics, coaching at the international level in swimming and participating in triathlons, even as my wife and I are both approaching our 60s, or I'm in my 60s, and we're still at it. We have a tremendous story to tell, and we're very excited to get right into it. We're going to look at this material, this idea, this family called ASEA. We want to first discover, I'll tell you a little bit about our life experience. I was working as the head research physical therapist for a local Shriners Hospital here. And I really found that I was missing out on some things at home. I was teaching at the university, coaching my athletes, and I was really not home very much. And there were a lot of things that I could do better. I was looking for some other changes, but I was also one of those people that was incredibly curious about the human body, the physiology, how it all worked. And yet I wasn't really fancying myself as somebody who could really run a business. I needed some new ways to think. And this is how it came about. A friend of mine, Denny Robinson, someone that we'd worked on another project for years, had come to ASEA, and she said, you know, this technology is so vast and so broad. The first time she ever brought it up with me, she said, I want you to assess it and see if it really makes sense. I don't really understand the science fully, she said, and I'd like to have you talk to the people that really put it together. Once I saw what was there, it started to change my entire world. I was very clear on where I was going and what I was going to be doing. However, somebody was draining the bucket. And so all the things that I had for skepticism, I literally had to put aside because I was going down to zero income. And I really couldn't go back to school for all those years to do something else. I knew there was something out there, but I just didn't know what. I was one of those people that always wanted to kind of find the frontier. And welcome to the frontier. I'm going to tell you a bit about the story of how this company started. These are a couple of amazing gentlemen, that father-son team of Vertus and Tyler Norton. Tyler was approached by a biotech firm in Salt Lake City because they had worked on a project that was very significant over about a 17-year period, but they were running out of funds. And they said, can you help us to find those? And he said, you know, I'm not the guy to ask. You need to talk to my dad. Well, this is a very, very special person, Vertus Norton, who really put together from the 18 separate entities what you and I call Kraft Foods today. He was the vice president of Kraft Foods, in charge of the strategy, and many of the things that he created back in those days that made it the mega company that it is today are still being taught at some of the major universities. He came and sat on the board of this little group to try to find if they could get some more money, and he found out the management wasn't quite right for it, and they didn't have this material stabilized. It was a really radical, interesting material that was made to try to mimic how the body and the cells were actually able to identify and destroy bacteria that were the bad bacteria and leave the good ones alone. It was looking inside of how the cells operated that had so much intelligence. The material was fabulously successful, but it only lasted for a few minutes. Thus, for those numbers of years, there were lots of people that were investing in the concept of, boy, when this comes out, it'll be the best thing we've ever heard of. Well, it had problems financially. They finally had to shut it down. And Vertus decided to put together a group and go after the company, and they finally bought the proceeds. But there was still a problem. They needed to find somebody who could stabilize it long enough to get it shipped to the end users. And so they called on Dr. Gary Samuelson, a nuclear medical physicist, who was able at that point to stabilize the material, for over a year in a bottle. So the first version came out in a bottle, and it was a interesting material. And Virtus wanted to find out, okay, it tastes a little bit funny. This is the first time we've really found that we want to use it in a drinkable form. And so he gathered about 40 people, not exactly 40 people. And these were people that came from their sphere of influence and friends, families, business relationships, church, all kinds of different folks. And most of them had a very significant something that they were trying to assist in the quality of their lives. And they said, you know, you can have this stuff for free. We'll pass it out through the back door. We just want to find out if they actually would use it or drink it or buy it if it worked. Well, that 2 months later, they came back and said, let's take an assessment of how people liked it. That 40 continued to grow. They literally were taking more than they actually needed for themselves, and they were shipping it to over 135 people in 20 countries. Wow, I guess it works. So what Virtus did with his team was to call on a major big pharma company. And they said, you know what, we're going to offer you huge amounts of money, but there's one major caveat, and that is that you must take everyone off of it that's ever been on it, and they'll never have access to it again. Well, Virtus, that's not his heart. His heart was a legacy of taking this material to the people who needed it, to get it all around the world in the hands of people to people. He wasn't quite sure at that time how they were going to do it, but he did know that he was going to turn down that drug company and start his own company. The story became very successful. It started out in 2008, the lowest economy in 70 years in America, and they did it anyway. Started it in Salt Lake City and moved it around the world, as you can see, in multiple distribution centers, and now over 36 countries worldwide, $500 million in sales, year-over-year growth, and tens of thousands, in fact, now hundreds of thousands of people who have had positive benefits from it. But tonight, what I want to share with you are some really radical things that could come from an affiliation with a company that does this. The first thing a lot of people take a look at is, will it help my health? And interestingly, if you're made of cells, and if it is used on cells, whether they're in people, plants, or animals, those cells can begin to start to operate like they used to on their very best day. They can change the whole direction of your future by simply supplying them with something that is sort of, we didn't know that it was so important, but it actually declines over the course of your lifetime. It's called redox signaling molecules. They were made in the cells, as was the first design, and they were to mimic what the cells do. Well, these molecules are made from the most common material in your body, which is water and salt. And in the process of using that water and salt, it's used in the most common, most necessary activity that you do, and that's called cellular respiration or breathing. It turns out that there's this radically important set of molecules that are created in that process that allow your cells to communicate with each other, within each of the departments within the cells, and all the way across the board. Now, when we apply this back to everybody, we had to find out a way where we could overcome people's skepticism. You can go on the internet and find all kinds of things, but much of what's on the internet is not backed up. So what do we have to do? Well, we could find people that actually are talking about the, I never heard of it, so it must not exist and it must be terrible. Well, how do you know? You know, many times I was surprised to see that when people wrote about certain things on the internet, and one was even just an article that came out about this one doctor, she just went after it. This can't possibly be true. And I thought, well, why would they write something like that? It's obvious they've never seen it, tried it, heard about it. But I guess it was because it was thought to be impossible. And we had to get it to the people in a way where we could use word of mouth, because most people believe that it's not going to work anyway, or it's not possible to make it. Here's what happens. In every cell in your body, it has to communicate tens, hundreds of thousands of things per second to do the most miraculous thing, and that's to heal itself, or to begin the process of making new cells to replace the old one, or in fact, to make things better if we do the right things. But what we find is with age and stress and the way we live our lives, our lifestyle, and in the environment in which we live, we get little spot fires going all the time. Our bodies are being attacked by the world around us, and the stress and the lack of sleep and dehydration, and it goes on and on and on. Well, what happens is there's a very, very definitive program that's all set within each of the cells and between the cells, where if there's a problem, like let's say a fire in the house, there should be a connection directly, like a cell phone or the fire alarm, that's going to be connected to somebody who knows how to fix it. And that works perfectly well when you're young. But what we found was that as you get older, you start losing the capability for sending that signal. And so some of the fires keep going and going and going and don't get the information to the places that can fix the fires until it's too late. And we start to age. We start to get slower processes of adapting to the world around us, and it overwhelms us, or we get disease states. So what we could find was, we said, well, the whole world is out there trying to do things like vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, and setting their sights on the fact that those alone will make the difference. Well, if that was true, we'd have the greatest health in the world, and we're actually down around number 22, somewhere around Pakistan. So what was missing? A critical piece. We found that piece. We call it Redox, ASEA Redox. It's a cell signaling supplement. It is giving back to the body those bars on your cell phone, if you will, the ability to talk. Well, let's look at an example of why that would be important. If you think about nutrients, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, food, structured oils, those sorts of things, imagine those to be like the building materials for a house. But if you just put those out on the building site and you left them there, and you came back a couple of weeks later, there's some problem, there's something missing. That is the contractor that knows when to start, when to stop, how big to make it, what to use, what to order next. That's what turns out to be this complex array of communications within the cell, thought to be absolutely groundbreaking, but impossible to do, because once it was discovered, there are now tens of thousands of articles in the medical literature saying, wow, this is amazing how this cell communicates. But the molecules that do it are those redox signaling molecules. They're very fleeting. They only last for a very short time in nature. The body's monitoring and adapting and correcting toward that, but we lose them over the course of time, about 10% per decade. And as we lose them, the literature, the stuff that's being written now is absolutely amazing. I was teaching medical physiology, and I had never heard of this concept, and then went to the archives and began to realize that at the time over 17,000 articles had already been written since about 2000 on this subject. And each one of them was basically saying, if somebody could ever figure out how to take these opposite types of molecules, put them together in one place, make it bioavailable, it'd be the greatest discovery in history, but they thought it to be impossible. But the impossible was done. They stabilized it. We don't even know how. They do, but we don't. But it gives us an opportunity to do some crazy stuff. Now, as a coach, as an athlete for all these years, for me, this was very profound in my own personal experience. I know how long it takes me to swim 4 lengths of the pool. I've been doing it for 55 years. And what happened was astounding to me. When I first started to take this, I could actually swim 4 seconds faster and then do 10 of them in a row. And my heart rate was actually lower than it was before. So it was really no surprise to me to start to see world record holders coming from the use of this material, simply supplying back what you used to make when you were young, and your body would start to act in a different way. Many people didn't realize, and we've got several studies that'll show it now, that when you're under puberty, little kids can play all day long, bounce around, do all kinds of crazy stuff, and they never get sore. But their teenage brothers and sisters, something switched in there, and it turns out that switch is the change in the sets of these molecules, the loss of them, and your body starts burning sugars for the first half hour of exercise, and then goes into burning fats. Little kids, they burn the fats first, and they don't build up the lactic acid that makes us sore and tears us down, makes us stiff in the process. So this material was tested and studied and found that 43 fatty acids were made available to burn immediately when you started exercising. Imagine what it would be like. What if you could get your hands around the technology where the first step and the first breath, you started burning fats when you did exercise? That may have a whole profound effect beyond just super athletes on people who are trying to get control of their whole body metabolism and kind of speed it up, do things that you did when you were little. It was so impressive that even worked on animals. And so what we found was, in a major breakthrough study, that in a 7-day period of just drinking the ASEA, the animals literally could run 29% farther without exhaustion. Absolutely amazing. Now, if we think about people, how many people do we know that extra boost of energy would make all the difference in the world? Then we thought, well, what other systems are made of cells? And it turns out skin and muscle and bone and brains and digestive system, essentially everything about you is made of cells. And what if we could begin to start to remind those cells how they used to work on their best day? These are all things that began to show up in these major laboratories, as Stevens and Associates out of Texas and Dermatest out of Europe. And surprising as a physical therapist, one of the most crazy ones for me, first off, is this first one, where the skin was actually making new skin 16% faster than it used to. And that we're going to look at in real time in a couple of seconds. That was huge, because we are, as we get older, we keep forgetting to make new skin at the rate we used to. So it doesn't heal as fast. It doesn't hold up against gravity as well. So if we could change that, that would be huge. Now at the bottom, this was other big factor for me, was this idea of being able to apply a simple, safe material. That's a key kicker here. This is so safe, it's literally safer than water. Your body's already making it. It's making it in the process of the most critical thing you do all day long, which is to do cellular respiration. Remember that term, respiration, breathing? Imagine what would happen if you put a bread bag over your head and duct tape around your neck. You know what? You would die faster than even if you did the best nutrition in the world or you stopped eating. You could live for 3 weeks without eating, but you can't live for 3 minutes without this respiration that creates these separate molecules. The key is you're losing about 10% per decade, and if you could add it back, things would change. Well, this one down here, this blood flow thing, we saw that using a concentrated form of this material over the skin could increase microcirculation by 50% for up to 4 days. So many different things are attached to that. It's astounding. So what you're available to do in your meeting tonight, when you're at the homes that you're at, is to do this very, very interesting thing. Try moving something. Let them know about something that's not feeling comfortable, something that you're slow or balance or energy or endurance or all kinds of little things. And then you do the assessment, you apply the technology, and then assess it again 3 times in 5 minutes. They'll know how to help you out with that. That is one of the most amazing things, because I've actually done it 46 times on people. Didn't matter what they were dealing with. There were all kinds of different physiologic things. As a physical therapist, I'm always looking around for those: knees, elbows, shoulders, ankles, balance, coordination. And I could apply these technologies, and within 5 minutes, out of the 46 people, I had all but one in a 31-hour period. It was astounding. Had overwhelming changes. That was an immediate change, but let's take a look at what happens when the body's given a chance to do what it should be doing, what it used to do, if you reinstitute the signaling characters that it was using before. These top pictures show what happens as we begin to deteriorate. These are cells that, when you're a beautiful, perfect 20-year-old, your skin turns over, makes new skin every 28 days. Here we see skin that's lasting maybe up to 90 days. We see that the musculature has cells that are so tired that they just hang, or the skin hangs in bags. Here we see the wrinkles developing because there's not this rapid rechange in bringing in the new recruits and replacements. Here, look at the chin and its inability to handle gravity. And these are some pretty troublesome spots on the face. This one over here is actually an age spot, we call it, but it's this waste material that can't be removed because there's not enough circulation. This one is 28 days between these two pictures. Remembering what it used to do, just applying a topical application and taking some of this orally. This one is about a month. This one is 16 days from top to bottom. And this one, a 17-year-old who has this really heartbreaking condition that we see a lot of times out there, and literally looking much more like when she was 7 in 4 days. How much would this carry if we were able to let people see these kinds of experiences? If you had this scraping of the skin that tears so easily, bruises easily, and you could remind it how to do what it used to, we'd see some pretty radical change in a month. But think about projected months forward from that, where it's not trying to do something magical or special. It's only just remembering what to do like it used to. You know, little kids at under age 2 don't need to form scars like we do. If there's an open wound, they can close that wound in a couple of days so fast that it seems that the body doesn't need to make a patch for it. But when we get a little bit older, we start making scars. This is scars from too much stretching. And what we're finding is that after using this technology, these scars begin to literally look like they're changing back to normal skin. 16% improvement on cellulite. Imagine the market spaces that we're dealing as we look at all of these on the surface. Here's an example of that scarring that begins to start to say, hey, wait a minute, we didn't used to make scar. Why don't we go back and when we replace it this time, make something more functional, or up above here on this neck? Wow, that's crazy stuff. So what if we were seeing it for the very first time, feeling it, some of those things that you could do instead of just listening to me talk? Get in and get involved with it, get on it and use it. But think about it. Even though we can go after cleansing, repairing, replenishing with one of the most astounding groups of technologies in the world, safer than anything we've ever seen before, but much more higher ratios of returning to what you used to be, that would be astounding. But think, every cell in your body ages, and it also has these losses of their overall capabilities. What if we could take the thing that improved that endurance and the athletic capability, the average person being able to come home and have energy to burn, and then we see these changes in the aging process. And then we can also do it internally and look at some of the other aspects of aging, where you see so much difference between family members sometimes just because of how they chose to live their lives, how they use it or lose it kind of thing. Many will be reduced in what they can do in other areas. Remember, I told you at the very beginning that we could be looking at people's health. What I want you to remember is, if it has to do with cells, and if you were better at it than you are when you were young than you are today, this is very much worth your time and effort. What if we could live that high energy, high quality of life and battle against those damaging things in our lives and society? And we could put it out there in a way that everybody could use it in a very simple, very inexpensive form that was scientifically backed up. Well, this would be absolutely mind-boggling what we could do. And then most recently, we had a study that came out that showed that when people at average 35 years old, we began to realize that over the course of your life, your genes on your DNA begin to turn off. And they turn off in part due to the crushing environmental issues that we're under, and the stress and the lifestyle. So with that being the case, What if we could turn them back on? Well, it turns out that in this magical study of 8 weeks on these folks, we found that these important genes in each of the 5 areas mentioned here, the immune system, inflammatory response, cardiovascular health, healthy digestion, and hormone modulation, notice how many problems occur in the American system just based on those things alone. And your genes in your DNA actually have observation genes, and when you turn those genes back on, it can understand what's happening in the environment and then call upon the resources to put things back in order and do the fixes that it needs to do. We saw an increase of 29% up to 31% in these pathways that are turning on other pathways. There's a complex array that says we're beginning to start to turn on all these thousands of pathways that are monitoring the world around you and fixing it before it gets to be a major problem. The other thing that was very interesting in all of these different areas of application was once they went off of this material for an 8-week period, they slowly went back down to the aging processes that occurred to people that were their age that weren't using it. That has led experts to say things like, ASEA, in my humble estimation, is the greatest advance in lifestyle medicine, which harnesses the power of your own body to keep you well. That's by Ann Louise Gittleman, the First Lady of Nutrition, or Dr. Gary Samuelson, who wrote that these could be causing the greatest advances in health that we've ever seen. And he's the nuclear medical physicist that has stabilized it for us, changing lives in so many ways. But the number one reason why people are breaking down is the stress of our lives. So I want to go into one other little piece that you may be one of those that's interested in your health or the health of other people around you, or the aging demographic, or the exercise and physiology questions. But really, how many people do we know that live less than a quality life because they're spending too much time in an inefficient operation to create enough revenue to go home and do the things that matter? It's the number one thing that we deal with, is the stress from people's finances. So for some of you, you will look at this as an amazing opportunity to break through and be a part of something that is coming on the horizon. Basically, if we keep doing what we've always done, you keep getting what you always got. And if we follow everybody else in the pathway of what's been going on for the last 30 years, you're going to miss it. The world has changed. We don't have phones with lines in the wall anymore. We're actually doing things with phones that you don't have to hook up. So don't be in the industry that's putting phones in the wall. We want to have a technology that's a category creator, a third-party science backed up, life-changing benefits, heavily patented, no competition. Some of you, that just sort of strikes a chord that says, I have an entrepreneurial bent. I'll tell you what, it's changed our lives much more in this category than even in the health category. And so why not take just a short look at what that would entail for the average person? Just know that right now our world is changing in unprecedented ways, where we have companies like Uber and Airbnb that are trying to compete against well-established transportation and lodging companies that have to have all kinds of government regulations. They have to own the vehicles, they have to own the lodging or the properties. But Uber and Airbnb have figured out ways to make more money with no employees, with no properties. Try competing against that. And then think about the most relevant training in your future is going to be learning to work in networks. You see, corporations, the world is changing so fast that a corporation that hires people to do specific things, if their product changes, the world changes in what it needs or uses too fast, they can't retool. They can't get the people to come into those specific applications. So we're going to take a look at the power of what happens when we network. And one of the reasons why we're going to have to look at the future and say, in the future, you won't be looking for work, you're going to be creating it. And you're going to be creating a benefit for companies, or you won't be working. We see that employees were very valuable during the industrial age, where 167,000 people were in Kodak at its peak. They were processing film, but along came another company called Facebook that at 8,000 people was making 40 times more pictures per day than Kodak ever did, or a loss of 159,000 jobs, and they're not coming back. Blockbuster to Netflix was a loss of 58,000 people. Imagine how many have been lost to robots because of car manufacturing, building instead of people. The world is changing. And as it changes, watch what happens in the efficiency of shifting from what we call the industrial age, where it took 83,000 people at IBM 47 years of momentum before they made their first billion-dollar year. Then came an idea called franchising, and McDonald's took big advantage of that. And so in 30,000 fewer employees, did it in half the time. So here's the problem. It's deleting the employees. Microsoft comes along and does it in 1/10 the number of people with a thing called networks. So we've gone from the industrial revolution through franchise model to networks, and it's now half the time of that. But here's where it got radical, when we could take networks and people and computers and put them together. Facebook, with 1/100th the number of people of McDonald's, in 1/4 of the time did 15 times that $1 billion. This has radically changed how the whole world is working, and we're moving from employees to networks. So what would be amazing is if you could take advantage of you and the people around you and develop your own networks. You could begin to start to distribute the cutting edge, life-changing, world-changing technology and its iterations very quickly in a world that's coming. Keep in mind this, in a world of change, and I think you'll all agree we're changing rapidly, the learners will inherit the earth, and the learned are perfectly suited for a world that no longer exists. So we're saying, where are we going and how do we learn it? We learn it by being your own boss, working together with other people, but working from home, getting flexibility and time freedom that is absolutely unprecedented, where we can be so much more efficient and still creating a progressive organism that grows and produces revenue for your family. Huge tax advantages. I'll tell you what, in another lecture we can get into it, but we are being able to take advantage of things today that 5 years ago were absolutely off the table for us. Whole areas that are vastly more lucrative in terms of how we use our money and how it returns for us. And we want to teach that to anyone that wants to learn. Now, there are many people in different aspects of their lives right now. Some just need some money today, $30, $40, $50 today, right now. And so we set up a compensation system so that these first areas over on this side, people could actually get a product in the hands of somebody who needs it and make $20, $30, $40. That makes a huge difference in some people's lives. And then if they get a little hankering to move forward, there are many different ways that we can start forming these networks. And the farther we get across this, we move from immediate income to part-time income to full-time and unlimited incomes as we get more and more aware of how to work together in these networks. This was astounding to me. I worked for these corporations. I worked for the Shriners Hospital System. I worked at the university, and they were very set salary bases. And I was working way too many hours and not coming home. I saw this industry, and I saw that people were from home, building an enterprise in the evenings during their lunch break. And they were doing that to be able in months, just a matter of months or years, to make $2,100 additional every month. That was astounding. That was so far beyond my comprehension. I wasn't going to make $2,100 a month increase in anything. But then I started looking up the ranks and seeing that if you really monitored this, the average person with no degree, whatever your body, where you came from, your life and your credibility, these people were making vastly more than I ever heard of in 1 month. I couldn't even imagine at this level here. But then Denny, who had introduced this to us, didn't have all of the credentials that I had. And at that point, she was making exactly per month what I thought was the maximum I could make in a year and be allowed to make as an employee. So it was time for me to think completely differently And since then, we were able to ride the train. And within 2 years, 3 years, we were able to get to that kind of a monthly income and more. And I never would have been able to do that before. So we were using and tapping our wagon to this massive industry shift. Somebody else, no one else has it. We were working in the health, we were working in the athletics, and we were working in the anti-aging areas because there were areas of passion. They made a huge difference in our family and our health. So we decided to do this, and we recommend it to you as well. And that is to enroll. You can buy worldwide distribution rights for $40. It also includes a couple of websites and a whole bunch of instruction on how to use them. But most often you just need to talk with people with heart and then come together and learn how to be a network. Get a one-time enrollment pack of discounted packs and that sort of thing. Get started. Get aware of the technology. Be in the game and put yourself out there. And then we set up what's called a user-friendly auto ship. On that very first day when you get started, consider going after it for several months and really determining where you want to be and what you want to do, and get on that point in our lives where we had to make a choice. From here, we're moving forward. We were dead broke. We had all kinds of problems with trying to readjust, downsize, pull kids out of college, the whole deal. We couldn't even afford for our daughters to have weddings. So at that point, my last son was off to college. Marcia and I were coming back together. She had been teaching and working over here and raising the family. I'd been working over here, and they did not come together. But now it was time to rebuild a family. So if we sit down and think, what do we want in the future? We said what we wanted to do is to live an amazing life full of adventure and gratitude to God with people that we love and care about, making a much bigger difference together than we could ever make by ourselves. We wanted to get recognition for the people and what they did well. And we also wanted to make enough money to be done with me so that I could concentrate on the things that matter most in life. Well, we've vastly surpassed those things. You're welcome to jump right in there and grab what you want in life and find that this radical time of change is the greatest opportunity of your lifetime. These are just a few photos that bring to life what has changed in us. We're younger at heart. We're more able to believe in the future. We've got two amazing, beautiful daughters that had storybook weddings that we could never get. And even we've been able to go back, and we built the house of our dreams in 1993. And then over time, on 60 acres in a big, beautiful log house. And it was built by hand, by us, by me. And we lost it. And within 16 years, we went back to look at it the other day because it was up for sale. They put in nearly $500,000 into it, and we were able to buy back where we were before. Just imagine the legacy that we get to be involved with our kids. Now, I'm not saying that to just impress you. I want you to be impressed upon you that there is a chance. I suggest that you all take that chance, that you gather together, that you find out how immensely powerful human beings can be. Thank you for being with us tonight. I just wanted to play the advocate and to lay the groundwork for each one of you today. Your choice now is take a chance, do something big, make a difference. Thanks for being with us. I will be repeating this in about an hour and 20 minutes in the Western time zone for those who want to bring somebody else on. God bless you all. Have a great evening. Carry this to the world. Thanks. We'll see you later. Bye for now.